Hello and welcome to this special broadcast where we deep dive into the ground impact of GST 2.0, one of the biggest moves made by the government to boost the slowing consumption. The GST 2.0 that slashes the tax structure into a two-tier system aims at increasing compliance, tax base, reduce evasion, improve affordability, rise consumption, uplift discretionary spending, and overall upgrade standard of living. In a nutshell, it aims to help the common man spend with comfort without the burden of paying heavy taxes. Today, we'll get you a glimpse of certain ground reports from different parts of the country that explore the extent to which these benefits have passed in different sectors, ranging from auto to everyday electronics. We will also be joined by an esteemed panel of guests to help us decode the impact of these GST reforms from all angles possible. And joining me on this show is also my colleague, Anushi Vakharia. Let's first begin with looking at some ground reports. First up, we have a ground check done by my colleague Ritu Raj Purohit, all the way from Silicon Valley of India, Bengaluru. She covers the reaction of these GST cuts in Bengaluru's electronics market. Let's take a look at their reaction.
The recent GST cuts has sparked many cheers in homes as well as in shops. We are right now in Pai International Electronics here in Bengaluru. There you can see happy customers are all walking in many numbers. Plans have now changed into bigger plans probably. We also have a few of us joining here. So a lot of changes that you see the recent GST cut. What's the change that you're seeing? The footfall has increased of the customers, or what's the sentiment on ground for you, sir?
Yeah, of course, it's footfall is for more only for televisions and all. It's made from government side. It's very good opportunity for middle class peoples also. So for customer walk-ins also is more, but very good business is happening for televisions because of GST reduced. It's helpful for everyone.
Okay. You see, on one side you have Dasara festival that we did see, and now the Diwali as well. It's a win-win situation for the buyers, also someone who is selling it as well. So how do you see this was a long-standing demand probably, right? Like all middle class had this kind of a bigger dreams probably. So how do you see it as a benefit from your point of view, sir? What has been the changes for you like?
See, like all people is there, low class is there, middle class is there, high classes is there. See, thoughts like middle class people and all buying 32, 43 inches. Nowadays, it's increased for bigger panels, like 55 inches, 65 inches, 75, 86, 80, 98 inches and all is increasing the volume, bigger sizes. Because of GST also reduced, so many offers is also running.
Okay.
Middle class people also chance to buy a big TVs.
So what is your thought about the reduction in the GST? Now the prices have gone and there have been price cuts as well. So how is it really helping you out, sir?
Very happy to listen this, because before we used to buy purchase for 55 inches, we used to pay around 80 to 90. Now we are very happy to pay around 5 to 6,000 will be reduced for the GST. We can look out for bigger size comparing with GST price. We can save many more money there.
So what are you doing with your savings probably now?
Because we can see some other for adapters, stabilizer we can buy. Additional we can add on that. Very happy
sir.
for GST reducing also.
There you see now what is really the sentiment on the ground. Looks like the complete win-win situation for the buyer as well as for the seller.
Well, so that's one segment that we're looking at, but now it's also time to see how the auto sector is riding post the GST 2.0 announcement. We have curated two ground reports for you, one from my colleague Aishwarya Patil from the capital Delhi, the other is from Sujata Vivedi from our very own Amchi, Mumbai. Both these reports capture the ground reality of the impact of these tax cuts on auto dealerships and excitement of high festive spirits on the buying patterns. Let's take a look.
We're well into the weekend after Navratri as well as the Dussehra celebrations, midway into the festive season sales. Government sources are suggesting that the GST rate rejig has given a fillip as far as consumption is concerned. We're going to get a mood check of what the automobile sector is looking like, what customers are really going for over this weekend, and the days in the running as well to Dhanteras as well as Diwali, what really the mood looks like as far as on-ground sales are concerned. We are here at one of the Tata Motors dealerships, speaking to the sales manager and getting a sense of what customers are really wanting. Is this festive season sale better than the last year? Give us a sense. First off, tell us your name and.
And if you talk about the sales of last year and current year, there is a lot of difference. Just because of you can consider it as our Prime Minister reduced the GST prices. So and festivities on, festive moods is on. All the customers are coming to book their vehicles. More than 125 vehicles we have delivered in Navratras till Dasera and all that. And we started that process onwards 22nd of September when the GST is applicable. After that, if we talk about the lineup of our bookings and all that for the Dhanteras and Diwali, more than 125 vehicles we have aligned for the Dhanteras itself. And we are as we are on 4th of October, we have delivered more than 25 vehicles till 4th for this month, and lined up almost 125 vehicles for the Dhanteras. And
so total number of bookings in the last 30 days and run up to Diwali, how much would you consider in terms of bookings and delivery also?
You can consider it somewhere around 400 bookings till Diwali, and we will try to close it on somewhere around 300 vehicles delivery in October till Diwali and post that.
Maximum waiting on which of the models, right?
Basic variants, you will get the maximum.
Nexo Smart plus CNG, these are the models.
These models are most demanding in market.
I request to all the customers, those who are planning to buy their dream car, they should book early to get the timely delivery.
Well, that's the word. 3 to 6 weeks waiting time on one of your favorite hot-selling cars could be what you can expect as a consumer. That's the roundup of the mood check. Back to you.
We are here in a showroom to speak not only to the manager of the showroom, but also to speak to customers and understand from them what exactly has been their experience of buying a car, and has it really made their pockets easy when it comes to planning to buy a car, because of course it's a big decision for a family whenever they plan, especially for a common man. And after the GST reforms and after it has been brought to 40%, we see that customers have reportedly their numbers have increased of visiting the showrooms. How is the shop manager and the showroom manager, how are they been able to convert these leads, which are of course a gift after the GST reforms? How have you been able to convert them into sales, and what has been the response of people after the GST reforms?
So GST प्राइस कट के बाद काफ़ी लोगों ने अपनी फेवरेट गाड़ी जो कि वर्टिस GT है, दिस इज़ द हॉट सेलिंग सेडान इन द मार्केट, सो बहुत लोगों ने इसको बाय किया है. एंड बिकॉज इस पे हम लोग 60 to 80,000 का डिस्काउंट दे रहे हैं, प्लस देयर इज अ फेस्टिव ऑफर ऑल्सो, प्लस इफ यू एक्सचेंज योर कार देयर इज ऑल्सो exchange bonus also. So ऐसे मिला के you can get this car in your budget, and because you get a German built, and plus you get 40 plus safety features.
So and there are multiple features that you're also telling us about, and like you mentioned that customers are coming in more in numbers. When they come in, do they mention the GST reform as one of the reasons that they have been they have planned to buy a car?
Yes, definitely yes, because we have made an ad for this. Companies also marketing that, so people come because of the GST, because you can get approx around 80,000 on discount on this car at the top variant.
हमारे साथ एक कस्टमर है, आप गाड़ी खरीदने आए हैं?
Yes.
और आप ये टेस्ट ड्राइव ले रहे हैं?
Yes.
एक्सपीरियंस कैसा है?
अच्छा है, मतलब मेरे बजट में तो ये एकदम बेस्ट लग रही है मेरे को तो मैंने तो प्लान कर लिया है कि ये खरीदूं.
लेना ही है.
Yes.
अब देखिए, अगर आप ये 22 सितंबर के पहले आए होते तो आपको ये गाड़ी थोड़ी नहीं बहुत महंगी मिलती, लेकिन अब आपको पता है GST कम हो गया है.
Yes. मेरे को जैसे कि यहाँ के सेल्स कंसल्टेंट ने मेरे को बताया, तो मेरा प्लान तो चल रहा है ये बाय करूँ.
GST का रेट कम हो गया है, गाड़ी सस्ते में मिल रही है, इसलिए बाय करना है.
Yes.
Okay.
GST का रेट भी कम हो गया एंड गाड़ी भी अफोर्डेबल प्राइस में मिल रही है, तो ले लेते हैं।
ले लेते हैं।
Yep.
तो आपको ऐसा लगता है कि क्योंकि आप भी एक आम आदमी हैं और जब आप गाड़ी खरीदते हैं तो आपको बहुत चीज़ें सोचनी पड़ती है, लेकिन अगर आपको वो सस्ते दाम में मिल रही हैं और इस प्रकार इतना 2-3 लाख का फ़र्क अगर गिरता है गाड़ी की प्राइस में, तो आपको लगता है कि इससे आम आदमी में जो खरीदने की क्षमता है, जो साहस है, वो बढ़ेगा कि नहीं हम गाड़ी ले सकते हैं? वरना कई लोग सोचते भी नहीं है गाड़ी का प्राइस देखकर लेने का।
नहीं, ऑब्वियसली जो नॉर्मल लोग हैं उनके मन में भी ऐसा होगा कि मैं भी गाड़ी खरीदूं बिकॉज प्राइजेस अफोर्डेबल है एंड इवन दो हर कोई बाई कर सकता है अभी फ़िलहाल के लिए तो ये, क्योंकि जीएसटी की वजह से प्राइस ड्रॉप हो चुका है तो काफ़ी मतलब हेल्पफुल है, मतलब जो जिसको मतलब ऑब्वियसली लोग पसंद करेंगे गाड़ी बाई करना।
Well, the messaging from our ground reports is very clear. People are thronging to the markets to make use of these GST cuts because things are now more affordable and therefore there is a lot of excitement. Now, to discuss the impact though in much detail and from different perspectives, it's time to welcome our guests for this evening. We have Nilesh Gupta, Managing Director of Vijay Sales, Gulam Zia, Senior Executive Director at Knight Frank India, and Dheeraj Nim. He's the economist and forex strategist at ANZ Research. And of course, we also have my co-host with me, Anushi Vakharia, who's going to help us discuss this in further detail and also participate in this conversation. Let me shoot my first question to Nilesh Gupta from Vijay Sales. First, about huge GST rationalization, sir. This is a big boost for consumers. What's the kind of demand you are seeing from consumers in light of this era? And how are you looking forward to Diwali with these GST rate cuts in the picture?
So basically, what we have seen from 22nd onwards, there's a huge growth, and the growth is, in fact, the growth is around 50%. But the entire 50% cannot be attributed to the GST cut because 15 days prior to 22nd, people had stopped buying, and so the pent-up demand was also there. The pent-up requirement was there, but in general, what we are seeing is at least we can attribute 20% growth over last year due to the GST cut rate. And the best part is the consumers are very, very happy and the consumers are very positive and in a positive frame of mind to buy things. So I think this Diwali is going to be one bumper Diwali. What we feel is till this Sunday, the pent-up demand would be over, and then whatever sale we'll see would be the festive sale and the growth due to GST as well as festive. So I think the real measure would be whether it's 20% or more than 20% we'll be seeing in the next week. But safely, I can very well conclude that there's been a 20% growth due to the GST drop.
You know, even if you are looking on the real estate side, it's an interesting report that we are seeing from Knight Frank. Mr. Zia, just on that, it's a 20% kind of an uptick that we are seeing in just this Navratri Mumbai registrations as well. Of course, you know, there is the impact of early Navratri as well because of early Shraddh. Just want to understand the overall take, even in terms of demand scenario for the real estate space that we are looking at, because if we consider the first half, there was a downtick in terms of, you know, where the launches were concerned. So just want to understand the overall demand scenario. Does that continue to remain on the healthier side? Because if you look at the repo rates also, they have remained unchanged.
First of all, let's talk about the scenario because you spoke about the backdrop to the festive season. In the last 6 months, at least 3 of those months had a negative YOY growth on numbers as far as property registrations in Mumbai is concerned. So the number on your screen that you're looking at is the Navratra numbers that we are right now focusing on. More than 400 apartments sold in a day. So that's what leads up to about 625, 6,200 odd number that we are looking at. This is something which is a big boost. So as I said, in the last 6 odd months, YOY growth have been at least half of those months have been negative. And if you look at the whole this year, the calendar year we're looking at, the month-on-month numbers were actually reducing almost about for 6 odd months. The MOM numbers have also been reducing. So now when we come to September month, and September month itself has seen a huge growth YOY, some 32% growth on YOY. So while I agree that the Shraddh, in fact, even Shraddh, since you spoke about that, it's worthwhile mentioning that Shraddh this year also transacted 5% more transactions numbers registered compared to the Shraddh last year. So overall, this festive season has seen a good boost. As I said, 32% growth in September YOY number, more than 12,000 apartments sold in Mumbai. Now that's what. Now whether you related to GST or something else, well, not very clear yet. But one thing is clear, that things which were not looking so good for real estate sector for last so many months, many of them have been actually predicting that impending downturn. But this month at least has proven all of them wrong, because September has been a bumper September in last 10 years. So whether it is festive season or GST or mix thereof, month has been fabulous for real estate sales in Mumbai.
Wow, Mr. Ziga, that is a very interesting comment. We will continue on those lines, but I'd like to get Mr. Nim here in this conversation as well for some kind of economic perspective, right? Mr. Nim, we have been talking about the positive effects of GST 2.0 quite substantively, but I'd like you to comment on the short-term possible revenue loss as well. I'm just curious to understand how this works, and you might be able to bring in some light to this picture. For instance, if there's an 18% GST on a substance which has been now reduced to 5%, and say because of the reduced price, there is a 15 to 20% increase in sales, that doesn't necessarily offset the short-term revenue loss that that object might experience, right? How is the market, is the Indian market currently ready to absorb that kind of revenue loss according to you?
I think you bring up a very interesting point here. Look, it's very well known that the short-term buoyancies of tax cuts are not high enough to offset revenue shortfalls that happen because of rate reductions. But that's a fiscal problem. That's a problem for the government revenues. And the bad news there is that even before GST cuts and their effects are being realized, the tax buoyancy for the government has already fallen short of their budgeted targets, and which is something that the bond markets have taken, notice of. And as you know, that the bond yields have already risen, even though the repo rate has virtually been held constant, at least in the past two meetings. So I think the problem is so much more on the market side, where bond yields have risen, considering the fact that there is some fiscal stress in the system. But that does not take away from the fact that the GST cuts or the GST reforms are actually growth positive. As you've heard from the gentleman before, the sales are doing pretty good, and at least there is some premium to their sales growth numbers, even year on year, because of GST cuts. So if you notice the kind of commentary that your own reporters have given, the GST cuts have made that aspirational spending easier for you to buy that slightly more expensive car, which was beyond your affordability before, is now possible. So that certainly adds to national GDP, and certainly by its own virtue adds a bit to the government's coffers as well. But like you pointed out, it won't obviously be enough to offset the complete revenue shortfall, which I believe, according to the government's own estimates and doing some analysis on that, could be about 70,000 crore rupees. And that is a fiscal problem. But that aside, of course, this is a very strong and a positive medium-term reform that we had been batting for quite some time.
Okay, so that's the macro picture that we are looking at. But coming back to the overall consumption story that we are seeing, Mr. Gupta, I want to ask you about this. With the 20% growth that you see in the demand side, just want to understand in which categories in particular you see the maximum pickup in demand or growth. Especially want to understand on ACs as well, considering that last quarter we did see an impact by these erratic monsoons also, which had led to a downtick in terms where the AC sales were concerned. So if you can give us an overall picture.
So I think the maximum pickup which we have seen is in televisions, especially large screen televisions. So what will happen now is the 43-inch will become the new 32. The 30 will become the new 32-inch. And then we'll see a lot of upgrade from 55 to 65 and 65 to 75. And a few customers even going in the range of 85 and 86 inches. So I think the biggest thrust is going to be, right now, will be color televisions, followed by ACs. But AC is seasonal, so we will see a major boost in air conditioners this summer, the summer next year. So I think this is going to be a very big summer season when we done it. And in case if we are able to get, normally October is supposed to be a mini summer, although there is still erratic monsoon which is happening, rains which are happening, and due to which we are not getting that mini summer. But in case maybe a week later, if that mini summer comes in, then I think the AC would go to maybe 30-40% growth also. And AC is needed badly for the simple reason is this year we did not have a great summer. So there was always a degrowth in air conditioners, and a lot of people have stocks carrying with them of the summer. So I think if the weather permits, then ACs will see higher. And percentage-wise, if you want to see growth, then I think dishwasher has done the best but that's on a low base. But there is once again an interest in the category of dishwasher. So I think the 28% to 18% in dishwasher has really helped us.
Okay. Mrs. Ziga, I'd like to now get you into this picture again. Speaking of real estate, especially because you track the space so closely, for the longest time, we've all been talking about how premiumization as a trend in real estate has been so prevalent, and especially demand for urban housing, and that too on the higher side, has increased over time, especially with standard of living improving. But what happens to the mid-segment is, because of GST reforms, do you think affordable housing could take center stage and there could be an improvement in sales on that front as well now?
A very, very important question, which people have been not talking about for a long time, is the housing demand for mid to low end. Actually, the premiumization, the term that you're talking about, or sales of super luxury apartment has actually been so high that it has eclipsed the mid to low end of the market completely. Developers have actually completely dropped the idea of making affordable or mid to low end houses, and that's impacting very severely for affordable housing. So now, since you're talking about an improvement in the sentiments of the home buyers because of the GST cuts, there are two aspects to it. First of all, the supply side aspect of it. It will be worthwhile mentioning that the GST cut hasn't really brought the construction cost a lot below what it was earlier. I don't think it's more than 2 to 3% impact it will have on construction cost with GST improvements or GST cuts coming in. But it's ultimately, as all of us are talking about, it's the sentiment of the buyer who has more money in his pocket. Now, problem is when these buyers are coming out to buy the houses that they've been dreaming of, the problem is not enough of supply. For last 2 to 3 years, none of the known or recognized developers have been catering to this segment. And that's a huge problem. In all the top 8 cities that we are tracking, we do see a serious dearth of launches of affordable housing. And just 1 or 2 statistics, some numbers to talk about. Prior to COVID, this affordable segment used to have 2/3 the size of the overall sales of real estate. And it has last 3 years, it has shrunk to just less than about 24-25%, 1/4 of the overall sales, which means affordable housing, the sector is suffering severely. And that's where the problem. So today when buyers are coming out, they're not finding enough of supply. And that's the reason, while still the numbers that we are highlighting, the growth in numbers, it is still largely revolving around the mid to upper end of the segment. Lower end still suffering, no growth in these numbers purely because there's hardly any supply.
Okay, so that's the overall take, which we're looking for, the affordable side of things. But, Mr. Nim, coming to you on the consumer perspective and even from the government standpoint, just want to get a breakdown, while we are seeing all of these projections now cooling off in terms of inflation, with more savings on table with these GST rate cuts in picture, we are looking at, big benefits for the consumer side. But if you talk about the overall capex related issue now, there are government capex is expected to slow down. Well, there could be an impact that we can see on sectors like infrastructure, railways and so. So just want to understand from your point of view, what's the kind of outlook that we can build on for FY26?
All right. So I think that question is layered on many fronts. But, as far as I'm tracking data from high frequency indicators, it does seem that government capex is still holding up. In fact, it was one of the drivers of the growth rebound that high frequency indicators showed in the month of August. We don't have much data for the month of September, but the anecdotal reporting seems to suggest that the economy has been doing well. Now, as far as the GST rate cuts and the private capex question go, look, the spirit of the reform is that if you put more money in the hands of the people, you will stoke domestic demand in a multi-sector format, which could in turn lead to capacity additions over time. However, we will need to see if this hypothesis completely plays out. Of course, a lot of the sales during the festival season could be one-off because a lot of the white goods, cars, etc., they are not frequently purchased by an individual. So a lot of these bumper sales, we'll have to see how much they last, because their lasting would be required for the capex, the virtuous cycle of private capex, to come into the picture. My own analysis tells me in India's economic story why private capex has lagged over the last few years. Demand is fundamentally the problem. And within that, the broader trend of consumption growth weakening, whether it's because of low wages or low disposable incomes, there has been a problem in the economy on that front. And I think GST reform to some extent addresses that. Having said that, I think the overall growth of domestic demand is not going to be that hunky-dory, because we are still speaking of an economic environment which is fraught with uncertainty, whether it's coming on account of tariffs or economic policy, etc. And not to forget that households are still quite indebted. The debt spree of the last few years still has to be repaid, so the debt servicing burden is still elevated. So all of those factors accounted for, I do think that India can still grow very healthily by about 6.5%. Of course, the Reserve Bank of India thinks it could be higher at 6.8%, but all within the margin of error. Having said that, I also believe that this would still be very much a real estate and a public capex story more than a private capex story. So that kind of, the composition of growth perhaps is here to stay.
Wow. I think you drew the lines between public capex and private capex in the context of GST reforms very well. So thank you so much for that. But gentlemen, that's all the time we had on this show. Thank you so much for bringing your perspectives and adding on to this conversation so well. I think we have a lot of key takeaways, but thank you so much for your time. And viewers, if I had to wrap this discussion today, I'd say that of course, the aspirational spending of India has improved since GST 2.0 has come into the picture. People are thronging into the markets, buying what they like. There are discounts running in and out. But there is a short-term, perhaps, fiscal overhang that needs to be addressed. Moving on, we will have to see what the economic implications would be. But for now, people are happy, and that's what matters, especially now that we are amidst a festival season. So have a good weekend. Thank you so much for watching NDTV Profit. And stay tuned as we continue to give you a lot more news and updates only on this channel.